over the past 6 months, or a little longer, people are like, what's the economy like? What's going on? Is it slowing down? Interest rates in real estate are high. And some people are like, what should I do? Well, the only thing I can tell people is like, two things on that is, number one is you can't expense your way out of a recession. Like, you can't just cut all of your expenses and then expect your business still to thrive. So you gotta be careful there. And along that way, like, business owners that are freaking out right now, and sometimes they are cutting really, really good virtual assistant talent. And so the market for finding great VAs is really, really good right now. And I'm not just saying that. Like, I'm even growing my own team, because you have a team, you have a business that's doing 2 million a year, and all of a sudden they're doing 1.7 a year, which is still amazing. But they freak out that they lost a few $100,000, and they start letting go of some people. And they usually let go of their VAs first, unfortunately.
Hey, what's up, Masters? Welcome to another episode of Path to Mastery Podcast. Today we are with Mr. Justin Nelson from Sphere Rocket. What's going on, Justin?
Not much, man. Another great Friday for those with leverage. We're about to get a weekend off.
Great Friday for those with leverage, about to get a weekend off. What are you talking about, man? Tell us. We'll start right there, man. We're just going to get into it.
Oh, I love it, man.
Why do you even say that? Like, what does that mean?
Man, I say that from a place of just abundance of learning lessons of mine, where, been in the real estate industry since I was 15, and probably from like 15 to 23, I thought the only way to make a lot of money, to grow fast, was to, put in 80, 90 hours. And, while stints of that, can be healthy and can be good for a supercharge, my new passion's been like, how can I make as much money with as little time invested as possible, or as much time as I want to put into it. So that's kind of my little jab of a passion of mine now. So,
yeah, I know. I was kind of joking with you, because I get it, man. I'm a real estate agent as well. So I don't practice anymore like you, but I get the, always on, man, doing every little detail yourself. So we got to get away from that. And also we'll talk about this, I'm sure, but how it stunts growth, right? It stunts the growth of the agent and the business owners. So let me tell you a little bit about who you all listening to here today. This is Justin Nelson, the founder and CEO of Sphere Rocket VA. It's an industry leading virtual assistant workforce. They've been around since 2020, and they have placed more than 5,000, hear that, 5,000 VAs serving 1,500 plus small businesses. Justin began his real estate career at age 17. I'm sorry, man. I gave you some extra credit, brother.
I love it.
Running marketing, lead generation. I don't know. Can you even do I don't think they let you do real estate.
I started right around 15, 16 doing marketing, but no, I couldn't actually sell a home.
Technically you can't sell a house, but I think my mom had me doing flyers and stuff, like, know how she'd have us come in and put the envelopes, the labels on the envelopes and all that other stuff. So, but anyway, man, you became a top producer, generating $320,000 in gross commission first year using social media and marketing hacks. And in 2019, you started a coaching company, and now you help agents leverage their business through social media and hyper growth strategies. You help small business owners hire effectively and utilize virtual workers and quickly. And before I butcher any more your bio, I'm just going to say, man, you're what you do is something that all, not just real estate agents, but business owners should be looking at. And we started talking about this, Justin, before I started recording. Is it's one of the biggest challenges I see with business owners. I work with a lot of local business owners, and they're all in the same place. Well, not all of them, but a lot of them kind of get stuck doing everything. So let's start there. Like, how common is that, and how do you help people with that?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously any solopreneur that I call a part of a non-risk industry is always going to kind of be, doing everything. And, sometimes people ask me, well, what do you mean by a non-risk industry? I'll be honest, David, sometimes where I can rub people wrong is I tell them, like, for example, getting your real estate license, it's not as huge of a risk as compared to other entrepreneurship journeys. And what I mean by that is, like, let's look at a restaurant, for example. Like, David, if you were going to open a restaurant, right? Like, you'd be like, I got to hire a server. I got to hire a cook. I got to hire, someone to do my stocking. I got to have someone clean the place. And it's just like an accepted fact of that industry that you got to hire people to be successful. But there's a lot of other industries like real estate where you can do everything yourself, where you look around and 90% of people don't have any leverage, they don't have help. And so I would say it's super, super common, especially in the entrepreneurship fields where you're not in retail, you don't have shop space, you can work from home, and just because that's the way you can do it doesn't necessarily mean it's the way you should do it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I never really thought of it from that perspective, but I think obviously you and I have both been in a real estate space, so we see a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, your clients, are they primarily real estate agents, or do you service other industries as well?
Yeah, so my background is obviously in real estate, so I had a lot of being known in that space for the growth I had. And so first 2 years of Sphere Rocket, we were heavily focused in real estate. Probably about 80% of our clients were real estate focused. And then over the last year and a half or so, we've really expanded out. So about 3,000 of the VAs are real estate based, and about 2,000 are non-real estate based. And those 2,000 could be anything from electrical engineer's assistant to someone coordinating janitors at a local high school for the local cleaning company to a small mom and pop plumbing shop, someone running their inside sales calls or booking. And so it's pretty well, we've touched pretty much every industry at this point.
Good for you. That's awesome. It's funny you mentioned plumber. That's actually was going to be the example I said. Plumber. I know a couple plumbers, and they're so in the weeds with they do every little detail of everything. And it's a tough gig. Explain leverage for people listening. And then I got a couple questions on some challenges with you.
Yeah. So obviously I think a lot of times people overcomplicate leverage, but I mean, leverage is anything you put into place to give you time back. Right. So, sometimes people think, well, leverage, Justin, speaking about getting a virtual assistant or getting an in-person assistant or hiring a COO, whatever it may be, but what I really try and teach people, even though I sell virtual assistants, is leverage could just be getting your groceries delivered to you. So that way you can spend 30 more minutes lead generating, right? Or 30 more minutes building a system in your business. Or shocker, you can spend 30 more minutes with your kids, right? The $5 delivery fee, you can spend it doing a little bit more of what you want to do rather than, so leverage for me is not just hiring people, but just what are the things I can put into place to give me some time back.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of the things that the VAs can do. So let's give some examples of some of those things. I know you mentioned, just spending time with your kids, like dry cleaning the house, right? We have a house cleaner, like things like that. What are some examples?
Yeah, so I always split it into two categories. I split it into personal activity categories and business activities. So if a virtual assistant's assisting me with personal, it goes groceries. And when I say groceries, they're coordinating the groceries, they're coordinating the house cleaners, they're taking care of all my doctor's appointments. So they're staying on top of getting all of those scheduled. While I don't have kids, a lot of my clients have kids. The virtual assistants act as one of my clients, the virtual assistants, every single day, they check the Ring cameras to see if their kids got home, at the right time. So that way, if the parents are at work, they're coordinating the kids' schedules. They're keeping up with who's bringing snacks for the kids' soccer game. And so while I'm such a business-minded person and focused on businesses, growing businesses, you'll find a lot of times, and this is something we'll talk probably a little bit more about, is if you can fix some of the things in your personal life to give you more time, your business life is going to also be affected as well. So obviously on the business side, I break it down into two categories on the business side. Category one on the business side is, what am I doing that I know how to do, but shouldn't be doing any longer, right? So maybe it's making your Facebook business page post. Maybe it's, creating graphics, editing videos, maybe it's running financial reports. So it's things you already do that, you just shouldn't anymore. And then where a lot of people see a lot of success is, what are the things in my business that I'm avoiding doing that I'm just never going to get around to, or I don't want to do, that I can hire someone else to do. And a great example of that is, and I'm sure, David, you know this, and we probably beat our heads over that, or we'll beat our heads over real estate agents doing this, is we're taught you need to call your past clients 4 times a year. Well, the reality is no one does that. Like it's so rare. It's top 5%, top 10%. And so, that's a great example of probably the number one most profound thing we put in real estate agents' businesses first. And this could be an insurance agent, right? Like, David, when's the last time your insurance agent gave you a call and said, hey, David, just wanted to say, I appreciate you using us for insurance. Can we do anything else for you? Like, usually the answer is
Never,
never, right?
yeah.
And so it's really
Really.
it's really, for us, it's starting simple, right? Simple with things that improve our customer experience that would generate more referrals. Like, if I got 50 past clients and my VA calls my past clients every single month and just says, hey, on behalf of Justin, we just wanted to say we love you. We appreciate your business from 3 years ago. We're just checking in. If that's all the script is, that's way better than the script you never even used or even picked up the phone to call them. So, so those are some of the big ones that ring the bell right off the bat.
So just to give you a little pushback on that, what about the agent that's like, oh no, I want to call, I can call my clients. I feel like that's, inauthentic or whatever, however they, they're like, what do you say to that mindset?
Yeah. So number one, obviously, if someone's actually making that, I first push back and go, cool, can you show me proof? And I like to push people, right? Like, if you're willing to accept help and get some coaching, are you coachable? And I'm like, cool, show me how consistent you've been. Because even someone that's like, I've called my past clients, if they actually try and show me how consistent they were, you realize that they just thought they were being consistent. And it was 9 months ago since they last called someone, or 2 years ago. And so I say, like, absolutely, if you want to keep that personal touch and you can do it consistently, that's awesome. But David, one thing I think I'll teach, and this is probably one of the big lines I speak a lot from stage, is there's a disconnect in people's goals and their reality. And so, like, a great example of this, David, is like the average real estate agent I talk to, and really business owner in general, their dream goal, and they always say this number, is I want to net $1 million. I want to net $1 million. And I'll ask you, because we haven't pre-planned this, like, David, to net $1 million in any business, what do you think the top line gross revenue would have to be to net $1 million?
Probably three something, right? Anyway,
And
maybe
then
more.
and that's if margins are good, right?
Yeah,
Like, if your margins are good,
exactly,
like three. And so I always tell people, I'm like, all right, so your goal's $1 million net, and you need to make $3 million revenue. And then we work the math backwards, right? It could be a plumber, it could be a dentist, it could be how many people have to sit in your dentistry, how many houses do you have to plumb, how many agents do you close? And then for a real estate agent, if they want to make $3 million rev, that means they have to usually close like 150 to 200 homes a year. And that's like if they're in a higher price market. And so I then say, cool, if you want to call your past clients forever, then you probably can't have a goal of 3 million rev, because something is going to have to give here, right? There's not going to be enough time for you in year 3 or 4 to call 800 past clients every single month or every single quarter, because there's going to be problems that pop up in your business that are bigger problems at that size of revenue. And so, you really just have to get back to what their end goal is and show them, like, hey, I don't think that's sustainable at your goal. Now, if your goal actually isn't $1 million and you're just telling me that, and it's actually 200,000, well, awesome. I think anybody can make 200,000 a year in real estate and still have time to call their past clients every single month. So I think it's just trying to really figure out what size of business does that person want and how much leverage do they actually want to have, because not everybody's the same.
Yeah. So as you know, I'm a huge fan of virtual assistants. I've been using them for 15 years. Also leverage. Not in the beginning, though. I'll tell you why not in the beginning. And I know this is one of the challenges that you're going to talk about is I didn't think anybody could do it better than me. Like I thought, like I was a perfectionist, like want to be and I wasn't that good, to be honest with you, Justin. Like, I was good at sales, but some of the other stuff. What gets in the way of people actually hiring a VA?
So it's exactly what you said, is no one can do it as better. And really what's interesting, David, and I know you're on a higher path than most people on this. It's like, when I really dig deep into it, it's actually, something that I got fixed in therapy. And some people are like, what are you talking about? It's like, I had to look at the root of, why do I actually care if someone makes a mistake, right? If I hire an assistant and they say something dumb or they do something wrong, what I realized is I was saying, well, that's a reflection of me. And I cared so much about the reflection of me that I was scared to death that someone would think something less of me. And so one of my, business therapists basically said is, Justin, you're always going to have a pissed off customer every single year. You're at least going to have one. And so you have to accept that every business is going to have customers that, find a flaw or find a mistake. And it's just the fact of it goes back to, if I'm going to grow a $3 million rev business, it means I'm going to have 1,000 clients, which mean I could do everything perfectly right. I could have the best assistant in the world and someone still going to be upset by something. And so I had to disconnect people's reactions or people's thoughts of what happens in the business from me and go, awesome. I now know if I hire the right people and they're genuine people that align with my morals, my values, the core mission values and things like that. And they mess up. I know that that's not a reflection of who I am as a person. And that really helped me get over, the piece of, but it's easier said than done, right? It took me many years.
Did you really go to like counseling for that? Or
no, straight up. So like Dustin Runyon, he's my business therapist. He's a big entrepreneur, but focuses on the psychology of things. And it's no different than going to like a Tony Robbins, seminar. He's going to really talk about the psychological piece. And it was one of those things, as soon as they said on stage, like, hey, look at a $3 million business around you, David. Like, do those $3 million people have assistants? Do they have team members? And it's like, only 1 out of 1,000 people make $3 million and net $1 million by themselves, right? Sure, you got an influencer, you got a rapper, you got the person that, did something crazy and it's blowing up and they can do it by themselves, but it's not sustainable for long term without leverage and help.
Yeah, absolutely. It is definitely, I believe it's one of the things that holds most business owners back, not just real estate agents, business owners in general. They just, because they're stuck in the weeds with everything. So let me ask you this question: VA versus having an in-person person, pros and cons. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of people think, oh, Justin, so I have about 100 VAs that work for me personally. So the 5,000 are obviously spread across businesses. We still have some connection point to them and management and things like that. But so I have 100 on my personal team and I got about 20 US based. And, when someone says, well, my VA can't do the following, the answer is, yeah, you're right. Someone virtually can't do everything if it involves in person. And so really where we specialize, with virtual assistants and where we find most people have virtual assistants is one of 3 categories. I'm a solo entrepreneur that has never had help before. So I want a virtual assistant so that way I don't have to go into an office to where I can still maintain my freedom. I can be at my computer and I can work with this person, train this person, and I can learn a little bit more. A lot of times people use virtual assistants to learn leadership skills, right? And it's a little easier to learn leadership skills at $3, $4, $5, $6, $7 an hour, which is what most virtual assistants when they're foreign-based cost, versus I hired my first executive admin at $30 an hour. Right. And a lot of times as a solopreneur, if you hire someone at 30, 40 bucks an hour, you have this intense pressure for them to change your world really fast because of how much money that you're spending on them. And so solopreneur is the first one we see. The second one is, someone that has in-person staff. You have an in-person staff or 2. A great example, this would be a plumbing office. The plumbing office was a small mom and pop. They're growing. They have an in-person staff that maybe does their finances and scheduling. But in order for them to be able to take 50 more calls on the phone a month or 100 more incoming calls because of their growth, they might not quite have an extra 60 grand a year to hire an office admin, but they might have 10 grand a year to hire a virtual assistant. So the virtual assistants serve as a bridge between getting to your next level of an in-person hire. And so it's really not one or nothing. It's not really, I'm all VAs or I'm all in person. And then kind of the last one is there's just some businesses out there that just want to work remotely and they want to have talent from across the world. I will be very honest with people. A lot of my talent, because I can look on a global level, I'm looking at billions of people now with applications versus my little city in the middle of, Alabama, for example, had a client. She's like, I need a real estate admin, but my town only has 1,000 people in it. She's like, I'm not getting resumes. I was like, well, when we open this up to 1 billion people, we're going to have people that work in the Philippines that used to be a assistant for a team in a different market that they maybe did 500 home sales a year. And now you only need to do 50. That VA is going to come and crush it in your world because that they were working at a different caliber in a different market. So it's a really interesting. So I know that was kind of a long-winded answer
No, it's
of,
great.
of ways people do it.
I
Go
mean, you
about it.
just the more you talk, you just prompt more questions for me. Which is great. Yeah, U.S. based versus overseas. Talk
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah. So obviously, overseas for me, is a big thing. Is obviously the cost reduction, right? A good solid virtual assistant over the last 5,000 hires, we average about $4 to $5 an hour. So you're talking $800 to $900 a month for a full-time VA. Now,
That's all you
obviously,
guys charge is $4 to $5 an hour.
yeah, that's correct.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so the RVA company is a lot different, and this is something we can talk about too, like later on, is difference in VA companies, because we created a little bit of a different model. But the main reason why a lot of people go VAs is that reduction in cost too, right? Reduction in cost. I'll never be someone that says get rid of your US based employees, put everything overseas. Like, that's not me. I'm pro America. I love building jobs here, but I promise you, I would have never have gotten to 20 US based employees if I hadn't used VAs to help me get there. And so obviously, there's some pros and cons, and I'll probably give you the biggest one, David. And I think it's a limiting belief is I hear this one all the time. Justin, I don't want a virtual assistant because they have an accent, right? And it's really interesting when I'm on a stage or I'm in a room of people. I was just speaking in a room yesterday, about 500 people out in Houston, and the audience, someone says, "Hey, Justin, I don't want a VA because the person has an accent." Well, sitting right next to them, I could tell, because I knew who the person was someone that had immigrated over from a different country, and they had an accent. And so, in like a true, I went for the gut punch here. I said, I need you to turn your head left, and I need you to tell the person sitting next to you that you don't think that they could ever be successful or help you in your business because of their accent. And that person just went white.
Ouch. Yeah.
They went white. And now here's the thing, David, I'm going to agree with people somewhat on that subject, that a lot of times we have history where we call like a tech support center for Comcast or AT&T, and you get someone in India and you can't understand them. But there's a difference between calling and not being able to understand someone and someone just having an accent. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Because I like, you can understand your virtual assistants, right? And you might be able to tell they're from somewhere, but like at the end of the day, there's a difference between comprehension and an accent.
100.
Also, the fun fact is we place about 98% of our VAs are not in ISA roles. Inside sales, outside sales. So a lot of times, and I'm going to call some people out here, a lot of times agents, when they're really any business, when they think VAs, they think, how can I have them cold call for me? Because they're so scared to death of cold calling. And then when it doesn't work and they don't get deals, they don't take any blame for themselves for it not working out. They just go, well, it must have been my VA's accent, right? It must have been my VA's lack of understanding. And the reality is the systems weren't in place properly, right? They didn't do the next touch follow-up point. So I would say it's probably another really big thing we combat is the accent thing. But once you kind of call someone out for that, then they go, oh, that's really interesting.
So let's talk about that, because there are certain, like I have, like I said, I have 3 VAs right now. Yep. By the way, I pay, but they're worth
absolutely
more than $6 an hour. Yep. But most of them cannot cold call. They're not wired to cold call. They should not be cold calling. So I'm guessing you have a system for that.
Well, and so like, let me tell you this, everybody's wired, and you and I come from a Keller Williams world where we probably got taught a lot of this back in the day. Like I learned that people have a zone of genius, right? You have something that you love to do, the way you're wired, your disc personality, the ways, things like that. And whichever system you use to measure it, like, David, I'm not a cold caller. I did it for 3 years. I was good at it, but I didn't enjoy it. I didn't love getting out of bed and doing it. It's not that I was scared of it. I just didn't enjoy it. And so when a lot of times too, when people get their first virtual assistant, and you'll love this one, here's what they do with their first VA. All right, I need you to be my inside sales agent. I need you to be my outside sales agent. I need you to be my lead generator. I need you to be my social media poster. I need you to be my transaction coordinator. I need you to be my personal assistant. I need you to watch my kids on the weekends virtually. And you just give them every single thing that you hate. But when you look at the job description, you're like, wait, is this a video editor or a TC or your personal assistant or all of the above? And so a lot of times people try and use VAs as generalists. And that person's not the person that's really good at editing my videos. I promise you, they're a much different person than the person that needs to be your personal assistant. Like, and I mean this with the most respect, and me and my team joke with this all the time. My admin that do my video editing, they're gamers, they're nerds. They love to sit in a dark room with awesome computer setups. But that person is not organized. They're not going to be like, Justin, you're late to a meeting, I'm going to start writing up notes on your meeting. That's not the creative brain. Like that's not the type of person they are. So I would say that's probably the biggest mistake. And this might lead us to another talking point, David. It's like, it's the way that VAs have been sold to the consumer that's actually caused people to have to make VAs generalist instead of getting multiple. Like, I'm sure you have multiple in different positions. Yeah, they're specialists, but it's actually the fault of the industry and how the virtual assistants packages are sold that caused that.
Yeah. Well, I think also you and I both come from the old school Keller Recruit Select and career visioning. So we understand behavior, which I think a lot of people don't. So, and just I have to say this as a dad, I have, 3 amazing daughters. Most people don't hate watching their kids on the weekend. So
no, yeah,
it's funny you said that. You added that into the things that people hate. So and it's funny because you don't have kids. You said that earlier.
Yeah.
I'll give you a pass on that. All right. As far as what else? I wrote down some other things here. Oh, when should someone be hiring a VA?
Yeah, so I mean, again, it's kind of funny. Keller's in my blood, even though I'm an EXP agent now. I'm still tattooed actually with Keller laws on me. But so at least in real estate, and a lot of businesses follow the same structure. It's not just a real estate structure. I come from an MREA book. I think that 10 to 20% of your income, in the business should be invested back into leverage, assistance, salary, something along those lines. And so I just look at it as a cost of your business. So if you're making 75 grand a year, I believe that you can afford, $7 grand a year in assistance or leverage. Now, obviously, if you're the sole income of the house, and you're making 75 grand, you might not have a ton of extra money. It just kind of depends on a situation. We'll kind of look at it. But if you're making 150, I think you have 15 grand to spend a year on leverage. And so, that's where a lot of times, David, virtual assistants come in, because someone making 150 grand a year can go spend 12 grand and hire a VA and be out, 10% of their revenue, versus trying to hire someone at 50 grand and taking 33% of the revenue out the door. And so I would say that's when someone's ready. Now, obviously some people are like, well, what would I have them do? Like, that's a whole nother beast of a question in of itself of what they should do. But it kind of goes back to that analysis of what are the things you're doing that you shouldn't be, and what are the things that you're not doing that you should be, is how to start that.
Yeah, going back to what you said earlier. Yeah. I mean, it really comes down to everything, like going out. Like I have a YouTube video called the 5 strategies to get control of your life back, and it starts off with, well, number one is set standards for yourself. Number 2 is set expectations. Number 3 now is to figure out what your hourly rate is, and then make a decision to not do anything less. And and I think you said it earlier. I don't know if you might have said it before we started recording, but if I'm doing paperwork and I can hire someone else to do paperwork for $10 an hour for me, then I'm doing $10 an hour work and I'm losing money.
Yeah, no. And the only caveat I would put on that is like you're spot on. Everything that's underneath my $1 per hour, I try and leverage the best I can. I do think rarely there are some things that are below our $1 per hour rate that we could possibly, still do. Like, could I pay someone $20 an hour to sit on a podcast with you and represent Sphere Rocket? Sure, I could. But, I do think there's still some things we hold, but I think it's like, you get 1 or 2, like what my coach used to say. You can get like 1 or 2 things in your life that are below your $1 per hour wage. But if you got more than that, well, then that's why you're being slowed down. So.
Amen. Do you know Joe Polish, Genius Network?
Oh yeah.
He talks about ELF, right? Yeah. So ELF, are you familiar with ELF?
A little bit, yeah. It's funny you say that. The very first real estate conference I ever did was held in Kevin Kaufman, Fred Weaver held a little private session in Joe Polish's Genius Network room, and the room was really cool. It had some really cool artwork in it, and it just kind of blew my mind.
Yeah. So. Well, because he talks about ELF, and the reason I bring it up is because, like you said about this podcast, is it's easy, lucrative, and fun. Like if it's not that, then you don't do it, right?
Yep.
Like, so it means it's easy, meaning it's not a rub, right? It's not super difficult. It's lucrative, meaning, okay,
Yep.
like you're going to do a better job on this podcast connecting with my audience and my listeners than probably having it. Well, I guess maybe you could have a VA. Who knows? Maybe you'd have a great VA do better.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yep.
Right? I guess we don't know. Maybe we'll do another one with one of your VAs and see. We'll A/B test it.
I love it. I love it.
And then, but then the fun part is like, yeah, you got to be having fun. So there are some things, you're right. Like a friend of mine was saying, we were talking about mowing the lawn the other day, and I don't mow my lawn anymore because I don't want to invest the time doing it. I have a landscape company that comes twice a month. They charge me $90 each time, and this other guy's, well, like I enjoy mowing my lawn. I go outside, I'm on my mower, and I'm like, okay, cool, amazing. If you like doing it, keep doing it, right? No big deal.
Yep, 100%. I don't understand some of those things, but I know there's things I do where people are like, "Why do you still do that?" Like, I'm like, I don't know.
It's fun, I
Yeah.
guess, for him. You know,
Hey,
he likes to driving the mower and doing his thing and listening to
yep.
whatever he listens to. So, all right, cool. Talk to us about, well, first off, if somebody's interested in your services, what's the best way to get some information on your services?
Yeah, it's pretty easy. Just go to hireleverage.com. So like the word hire, HIRE. Hireleverage.com is the best way to get more information on our services.
Okay.
You just schedule a time with our team, and it's really interesting. People are like, well, what do you hire? What should I hire? Or do you have like a list of positions you hire out for? Or like, do you have like a starter guide? Like, I get this one first and this one. And here's the answer, David. Everybody's business is so different, right? I talked to one agent making 100 grand. They love social media. It's kind of like what we just talked about. You talk to another agent, they hate social media. So, you know, like the one that hates social media, I'm going to say, let's get social media rolling for you so you don't hate it anymore. The one that loves social media, I'm probably not going to be like, yeah, give me your baby that you love to do and let's have a VA do it, right? Like I'm gonna be like, cool, you keep social media and let's figure out all the other things. So it's really custom, right? It's like, it's going to be different for every business. And, you know, that's something we pride ourselves on, is there's not like a sign up form. You can't just like check out and get a virtual assistant. Like you got to actually talk to our team first, which is for us a super important step. Just to learn a little bit more about your business.
How important to that point with the like social media as an example? Right now, I'm like, I have a lot of focus right now on my YouTube channel. It's actually in my 20% right now.
Yep.
Growing my YouTube. So I am investing a lot of time and energy, which some may say, well, that's not the greatest use of your time. But to what you just said, for me, I like to study it and kind of learn it. And then as soon as I kind of get it, then I want to find someone else to do it. Is that, are you similar to that?
Yeah. Oh, so very similar. It was interesting. I actually had a podcast, and this will be kind of, some people will relate to this. I was the host of a podcast, David. I was doing about 100 episodes a month, like just an insane amount of podcast episodes. And eventually I loved it. It was lucrative. Everything was great, but it was that thing. It's like, cool, I've got it off the ground. It's got traction. People love it. I went and found someone smarter, wiser, you know, better looking than me. The people enjoy it on camera, way better, way more charismatic. And it was actually funny. I slipped her into the podcast and they loved it. The podcast exploded. It grew. Right. And so absolutely. That's the way I think, is how can I get myself out of this if it doesn't have to be me?
We'll figure it out too, because, and then once you know it's figured out the right way, then give it to, like, if I look at myself and I take myself way back, and I say this for you listening, that might be in the same, we were closing 60 or so transactions. I had an assistant because I had to have one. I was a horrible leader, and I had all these systems in place that I put in place, and most of them were not efficient. Like they were just like, this is the way I did it. And then the lady quit. And they forced me to hire somebody. I think I went from, having somebody that was like 25,000 a year to like somebody that was like 50,000 a year back at the time. Yeah. And now all of a sudden she looked at my stuff and was like, well, hey, hold on. I think we can do this way. I'm like, I don't know. She's like, no, seriously, let's try it my way. And all of a sudden she came in and fixed things.
Yep.
And we got more efficient, right? And so the reason I say that is because a lot of times we just got to get out of our own way.
Absolutely. 100%. It's also another example of like, we can't be too cheap either. Like I used to be like, awesome, I can find an assistant in the US for 18 grand a year. And this was like 10 years ago, right? Like in a little city. And it's like not anymore. It's like, but if the average is 35 now, like I don't want the average. I want someone above. And I kind of look at my own life. I'm like, if someone offered me a job today at 100,000, I'd probably be like, yeah, not really. If someone offered me a job at 500,000, yeah, possibly, if I wasn't in entrepreneurship doing what I'm doing now. But I'm like, top level talent is only going to get their interest peaked at a certain dollar amount, right?
Yeah.
And so I think the same thing goes with VAs, which is kind of a side note here. Like David, I'm gonna be very transparent with you. You can go to the Philippines, you can get a VA for $2 an hour, and it's ethical. That's way higher than their average income. It gives them a good life. But just because you can doesn't mean you should, right? Like that's a big thing. Like that means you're gonna get an okay assistant. They're gonna have maybe a college degree. They're gonna maybe be able to do some, but they're not gonna be like a killer rock star for you, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's a big mistake people make in the VA world is they try and go so cheap that they end up being like, well, why didn't this work? And I'm like, well, it's because you paid someone the 10 percentile of the bottom of the barrel. Like that's, while it could still be above minimum wage, it doesn't mean that you're going to grow a business like that. So,
well, I could go on with this conversation all day, but I know we can't. But I do want to ask you though, what is there like, how much training do you guys train them, or how? Because I think that's important for our listeners to know. Like, how, do they come trained? How, do we have to do to train? Like, what? Talk about that.
Yeah, good question. So there's three options when it comes to VAs in the VA world, right? Obviously, like I'm sure you've been experiencing this, David. Like you go do it yourself, right? Go to an online jobs PH, go to Fiverr, go to Upwork, find your own. Like just go to Craigslist in the Philippines, wherever you want to get them from. You could try it that way. Obviously, like you said, you got to train them, you got to screen them, you got to hope you're not getting scammed, you got to hope it's a real person, like all those fun things. But then you got the opposite end of the spectrum, right? You got the fully managed companies, some of the biggest names in the industry, where they're like, David, I got you an accounting VA. We manage the person, and they're going to come with everything they need to know. Well, while these companies do a really good job of training, here's the problem, David. It's just like when I got into real estate. When I took a real estate exam, I thought that I knew everything. The broker I went to is like, yeah, he's been through real estate school. He knows exactly what he's doing. Real estate school taught me nothing. And so we see this a lot of times with VA companies is they're like, yeah, for example, your VA is going to come trained on Boomtown or trained on Sync or trained on KV Core, CRM, or trained on how to do this. Well, here's the thing, David. Here's the secret. All they did with that VA is they made them watch a week of videos before putting them on your team. That doesn't mean that there's any real life practice on it. It doesn't mean that they retained it or actually got to put it into action, saw the things break. It'd be like me taking a brand new agent and going, or, a brand new dentist and going, hey, watch the training videos for a week on how to clean someone's teeth. That doesn't mean that they're a rock star at it. And so I always tell people you have to look for people that already have prior experience. And so that's what we look a lot at, that is like people that have prior experience that we can mold. And so our company does something really interesting. Whenever someone gets a VA from us, we actually give the employer a one-on-one coach from Sphere Rocket that's US based. So our coach coaches them on how to leverage properly. Then we also give the virtual assistant a one-on-one coach that is in the Philippines that coaches them. So that one-on-one coach would have been experienced in what we're placing that person in. So we give them a one-on-one coach for each side of it. And then we also do, for us, we do 20 group calls a week. So those 20 group calls they vary in topics, right? One could be blue collar jobs, how to do marketing for those, or how to do marketing for real estate. Like there's 20 group calls that really deep dive. Now, in full transparency, people that get VAs from us today are way better off than the ones that got them from us 3 years ago, because now I have 156 weeks worth of group calls that people get access to now versus someone that bought from me day one. So to answer your question in a long-winded fashion, we're going to find you the best talent with relative experience in their past. And then it's done with you along the way to help grow that person to go further. But I mean, last month, David, we had 84,000 applications to work for Sphere Rocket in the Philippines.
Wow.
And we only placed 200 VAs. I say only 200. That's still a lot. Yeah. But when you're looking at 80,000 to 200, we have the opportunity to turn away 79,800, which means it's highly competitive. Where if you were to try and get a VA on your own, this is a mistake I made in the early going. So if you're gonna, and David, I just care about people getting leverage. They could use Sphere Rocket, awesome. We'd love more clients. We know we can change your world. But if someone's like, I just want to skip Sphere Rocket, I don't want to spend any extra dollars, and you go do something like online jobs PH, or you go around it, like, I just tell you, like, you got to get more applications than the first go. Like if you put a job out there and you get 6 applications, don't just pick one of the 6 if they're not a good fit, because you're afraid to reinvest time. And so that's one of the big benefits we have is there's an abundance from
Well,
you to choose
we
from.
could go on for another hour and a half about not hiring your son or your cousin, right?
I've done it all.
Because they need a job. Well, listen, man, this was amazing. I'm seriously, I think we need to do another one. So we're gonna talk offline, and it's higher hire leverage.com is the way to learn more about your company. Correct?
Absolutely.
Higher leverage.
Absolutely.
All right. And Justin, anything else I should have asked that I didn't ask?
No, man. The only thing I can say right now is obviously over the past 6 months, or a little longer, people are like, what's the economy like? What's going on? Is it slowing down? Is people interest rates in real estate are high? And some people are like, what should I do? Well, the only thing I can tell people is like 2 things on that is number one is you can't expense your way out of a recession. Like you can't just cut all of your expenses and then expect your business still to thrive. So you gotta be careful there. And along that way, like business owners that are freaking out right now, and sometimes they are cutting really, really good virtual assistant talent. And so the market for finding great VAs is really, really good right now. And I'm not just saying that, like I'm even growing my own team because you have a team, you have a business that's doing 2 million a year and all of a sudden they're doing 1.7 a year, which is still amazing. But they freak out that they lost a few $100,000 and they start letting go of some people. And they usually let go of their VAs first, unfortunately. And so it's funny, like my business grows in down markets because people are, reducing costs. So I just say that, like, if you've maybe looked at VAs in the past and you didn't pull the trigger and you're like, I might need help now, there's a really good talent circulating from businesses that are going underwater or, or just, stalling and trying to figure out what to do.
So true, my man. Well, listen, I just want to say thank you. It was an honor having you on the podcast. I'm surprised we hadn't hooked up sooner. And hey, final question though, Sphere Rocket.
Yeah.
Why is it called Sphere Rocket? I've been meaning to ask. I forgot to ask you that.
It's funny. We actually originally were called Social Something Else. I'll kind of keep the name out of it out of respect. But I just randomly started my coaching company in 2019. It was randomly called Social Sphere, something along those lines. And long story short, we basically got a cease and desist because there was another company that started a year before that had something. And so I looked around. One of my VAs is like, well, we already got the word sphere. And we love rockets. And I really don't know why they loved rockets, but he came up with a logo and he's like, he showed me my logo, which if you guys look at Sphere Rocket now, it's a logo of a rocket wrapping the entire world. And I was like, well, a lot of the businesses we do, they need help with their sphere. And I want to recruit globally from a sphere. So that's where the Earth comes into our logo. And so it really was just kind of like demonstrating, like at that time, I was like, cool. We're going to be a sphere and we're going to grow this company really, really fast. So there's not exactly one meaning to it, but it was a blessing in disguise because I couldn't imagine my VA company called Social Sphere. Like it just doesn't have the same ring now that Sphere Rocket does. So.
Amen, brother. Well, listen, I appreciate you again. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And look forward to connecting again.
Thanks for having me.